Don't expect a 10 mil portfolio if you're earning $100,000 a year. That will be a 20-year plan. You have to have the income that supports that portfolio.
Doesn't matter which market you're in or what you sell, there will be a point where people, if they're interested in what you have, they will buy from you. If you've been providing enough nurturing, enough touch points, enough education, and if you're at the top of mind.
The only ways to grow a portfolio are from capital growth, so i.e. the property growing in value, your income to service the debt and how often you can save the deposits for the next one, and the actual cash flow of the actual property. They're the only three ways to actually build wealth.
What is the most painful lesson you have learned as a business owner?
Ooh, I've never been asked that.
What are the three most powerful questions business owners can ask themselves in order to scale to 8 figures?
Oh, do you need the money now? What I mean by that is...
Welcome to Founders Playbook podcast, the ultimate guide for entrepreneurs to build their empires, increase profits, and become great leaders. I'm your host, Nelson, founder and CEO of Vibes Creative, Australia's leading video podcast agency. Let's get down to business.
Welcome back to another episode of Founders Playbook. Today we have another legendary guest wearing a hat, by the way, very privileged. I've never seen him wearing a hat on his content, so he clearly knew where he was coming to. Today's guest is a founder, the owner of Palise Property. He has made over 2,000 property acquisitions and acquired hundreds of commercial properties himself and for his clients, okay? He has purchased in every major capital city and regional towns across Australia. Please welcome the legend, the incredible, Mr. Steve Palise.
Nelson, thank you so much for having me on. I've seen you all over my socials, so it's a privilege to be invited on the podcast.
Let's just cut straight to the noise, legend. What does it take to build an 8-figure property portfolio?
Time. Don't listen to any of the gurus that say it can be done instantly unless you're willing to do something outside the norm. And what I mean by that is typically have another vehicle that's high risk. And the vehicle can be property. The vehicle can be, I'm going to do really risky, high, commercial property or developments or something like that. But the lesson I always tell people, just to be transparent, is don't expect a 10 mil portfolio if you're earning $100,000 a year. That will be a 20-year plan. You have to have the income that supports that portfolio, or start a business. So business obviously supplements it quite well, but one of the pet peeves I get is you watch all the business gurus and they're like, oh, you can get a 30 mil portfolio like me. No, you can't. Until you're earning their income, you cannot get a 30 mil portfolio. So I always try to strip it back, but get in early. Just time is on your side. If you're under the age of 50 years old, you've got 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years in front of you. Get in early. Time goes fast.
So time is your best ally in order to get there, right? To an 8-figure investment portfolio. So you're mentioning as well that then basically your income is going to be the other factor as to, is this even possible, right? So in terms of a business owner or a founder being capable, let's just say that they really want to get to an 8-figure property portfolio just like yours. In terms of income, what does that look like?
So we'll take a step back. So stripping that back, so it's always going to come down. The only ways to grow a portfolio are from capital growth, so i.e. the property growing in value, your income to service the debt and how often you can save the deposits for the next one, and the actual cash flow of the actual property. So those three combined, your savings plus the capital growth plus the cash flow, is what gets you into the next property. So that's it. There's nothing more complicated than that. They're the only three ways to actually build wealth. So the two things you can affect quite easily, obviously, the cash flow, because you know what that is going to be instantly, and your savings if you can get your income up. The capital growth is speculative. You try to talk to a buyer's agent like me who picks the market, and we hopefully get that in the shorter term. But those two are the only ones you can change. So cash flow and your how much you earn. So when taking a step from further on from that, whenever I talk to a client about strategy, which is your question about how do we get there, you always ask them, what are you actually trying to achieve? Over what time frame versus what do we have to work with finance? So finance is not most people's bottleneck. They buy a few residential properties, their servicing hits a glass ceiling, they can't borrow anymore. and then they move into the income. But to generally, like, it depends what time frame you're looking at. Anyone can get a 10 mil portfolio if you plant horizons 20, 30 years. So it's just pretty simple. You buy $1 million property, it goes to 1.5, that lets you buy 1.5 mil, and it congregates. So like my first portfolio, I think it took me about 3 or 4 years to get a few properties. And then I bought 3 in 1 year because I had 3 properties that grew, and the 3 could be translated into another 3. So I went to 6. And then the year after I bought another 3. So I went to 9. So within 2 years, I basically bolted on 6 properties to my 3 property portfolio. What I've learned now, and this is back in the day when I used to be an engineer, so I'm actually a chartered structural mechanical design engineer, I was capped with my earning potential. So even though I got to that point, I couldn't actually keep borrowing for residential. And that's when I made the switch to commercial, because commercial is different type of lending, keep going. And then I still saw all the gurus I was following, realized, okay, my earning potential is capped at around 150. How do I get this to 300? Cool, let's go start a business or try something new. Not sure if I really answered your question about how to get there, but generally, if you can earn a couple $100,000 a year, 20, 30 years, you can get there. If you can earn $500,000 a year, you can get a 10 mil portfolio in 5 to 10 years.
And then because I'm guessing you had this expertise already as to, okay, I'm already a property investor, is that what led you to start then Palise Property?
So I came from the old school academia where you don't do a job unless you kind of learnt the ropes. So I actually I left engineering. I was going through a tough time in my life. I was going through a divorce and a bit sick of engineering and disenfranchised with that whole kind of thing. And then I joined a startup buyers agency. So I was their first employee. And then it grew when I was there over the 5 years to about maybe 30 staff. Which we'll probably circle back on because this is a lot of the lessons learned. I got all these startup lessons without putting my money into the ring as well. And then that became very corporate again. And I was like, this is not me. I want to be the guy who travels around Europe wearing a t-shirt and actually enjoying my property wealth. And then that's what started me to actually do it, is I actually moved overseas. So the employee said, no, you can't do this. And I'm like, I feel like I can. And we've obviously proved him wrong because now I've got 24 staff.
That's so good. So then you quit your job, you go start your own, and you do this while traveling?
Yep. So me and my partner's from the UK, and we were like, let's go to like a year or 2 over there just as a bit of a gap year. I wasn't really planning on going full throttle into business. I was actually looking at jobs. I was looking at like commercial jobs over there and real estate jobs, and like, I just learn another craft. And then because I wrote a commercial book, that came out and the leads just started trickling in. I was just like, oh, I might be onto something here. And then there was a lot of lessons by working overseas. Funnily enough, it was the best thing that happened to my business, and probably 2 reasons for that. First one was it actually forced me to create systems, processes, and hire staff way earlier than I would have normally. If I stayed in Sydney, I just would have ran around with the chicken chopped off my head kind of thing, trying to get stuff done, working huge hours. But because of the time zone difference, I needed people on Australian time. So I actually hired it. But because they couldn't talk to me regularly, I needed systems and processes. So most founders, I think, do it the other way. They focus on getting the leads and then worry about the systems processes later. I had to introduce them basically from day dot when I hired my first employee. So that was the best thing, because when I was in Sydney, most of my referrals came from physical networking. So I did like the BNI and lots of coffee meetings and all that type of stuff. That was off the table as well. So that brought me into the social world. I wasn't on socials before then. I was like, well, I can't do the coffee meetings anymore. How do I get in front of thousands of people by being remote? Cool. Started a podcast, started like doing advertising, sponsoring ads and all that. And then the other benefit of being over there was my clientele, because we buy investment properties, they do that typically after hours. Like some people like look at work and stuff like that, but when both partners are home, they do it at night time. Because of the time zone difference, I'd wake up at 4 a.m. I got 2 p.m. till 11 p.m. at night. So all my sales calls were at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 p.m. Got both partners, both decision makers on the call, and I was available. And then also when we found them a property in my team, they'd present that at lunchtime. They'd call me at 10 o'clock that night to discuss it. And I'd talk to them, tell my team the next morning, oh yeah, cool, they're keen on this property, get it sorted. So we compressed the time frame as well. So all these kind of things actually worked really well. Only thing I hated was you had to wake up at 4 a.m. and having a couple pints till midnight was a bit tougher.
That's so good, and you're absolutely correct. One of my top pieces of advice for new business owners is do document everything as quickly as possible. Create the SOPs of absolute everything as to how you deliver the specific results that your customers pay you for. The quicker you do that, the quicker you're gonna save yourself headaches, because at some point it's gonna catch up with you. That's one of the biggest issues that we had with our own business as we started to scale aggressively in the past few years, was that there was no SOPs. It was
Yeah.
everything. And because my main team member that's still with me, he just knew everything from shadowing me, right?
Yeah.
But we had everything almost like as a habit as to how we do it. But then when we started adding more people to the team, we're like, oh, we have to repeat ourselves like a gazillion times,
Constantly.
right? And you
Yeah.
have people coming in, leaving, so you have to do it all over again. And yeah, eventually we were pushed through pain of growing pains
Yeah.
as to, hey, we need to create all our standard procedures. And now, we're obsessed about it. Every single time that we introduce something new, we create an SOP, we create a video training. We try to always tell the team, hey, we need to make it impossible for everyone here to fail. And the way to
Yeah.
do that is to provide them all the tools, all the processes, all the coaching that they need. But yeah, SOP is a key one. And it's funny that you had to do it because you were essentially traveling. So because usually as well, the main thing that we tell people is like, worry about getting traffic, worry about getting leads,
Yeah.
get overwhelmed, and then you focus on building everything else. Get paid to build.
Yeah. There's no excuse now. There's so many easy softwares with Scribe and Loom and all this type of stuff. It's easy. You can literally just record your day to day and come up with the SOPs. But yeah, that was just the best thing for me, because I had to do it. Like, they couldn't talk to me. Like, all my employees couldn't get a hold of me until about 3 or 4 p.m. So if I had a sales call, then I was out the whole day. So it forced me to do it. And then, like you said in one of your podcasts, just doing the socials was the big changer, because it's a piece of content that lives forever. Like, it's not just one coffee meeting, it's something that goes on and on and on, and it just lives, and you can refer back to it. I'll get asked a question and I'll be like, oh, I answered a 5-minute question, like a YouTube on that. I send them the YouTube link. I don't even have the phone conversation with them anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you have done a tremendous job at creating a premium positioning in such a crowded market as well, because there's no shortage of real estate agents or people, helping essentially Australians get into property investing. But you pick a great niche, which is commercial investing, right? And as I told you before we got this podcast started, when I think of commercial real estate investing, if I have to think of a professional, an authority in that space, you're the one that comes to mind. I have other people that will come first when it comes to residential, but you have taken already that real estate in my mind as to he's the go-to when it comes to
Yeah.
commercial. So you have done a tremendous job at that. In terms of as well, I'm curious, we're getting started with podcasts and content. How did you go about it? Because most people overcomplicate content creation. So what got you into it? When did you decide, yeah, this is a great idea to do? And what did that resulted for you in business as well?
Yeah, one of the best feedbacks I get is that I give all my information away for free. Like, most businesses, they try to put stuff behind a paywall. I do like I've got a 10-hour commercial course that's free. So 12,000 people have done it. And the rationale to that was, most people will sponsor ads and be like, do my $5,000 course, look, it'll be amazing, blah, blah, blah. For me, I'm just like, oh, cool, I might get in front of 100 people that way and make a bit of money, but that's it. You're not known. But I'm not known as the commercial guy in the industry. But by making it free, now I've got 12,000 emails and 12,000 people that know who I am. Same thing with my commercial book. Like, I've given away, like, I charge postage just so I get it. I can consider them a warm lead as opposed to a cold lead. I don't do it to make money. I've given away 50,000 books. So I'm playing the long game. Like, most people, I think their biggest mistake is they go, how do I make money really, really fast? I got to like get a straight return on investment. I'm thinking 3 years down the track. And that was the biggest shift. And I'll come back to your question about like podcasts, and that was, if my focus goes away from just making money and just focusing on amount of eyes on me and just grow that for the next 3-4 years, money will come later on. You can always leverage that. It's the old like Alex Hormozy thing, like build the audience first and then leverage it. So that's kind of what I did. My advice for starting like podcasts, and that, my problem was I try to make everything perfect. Like, my commercial book, like I had no rights being published author, but I wrote my book word for word and went over it like 5 times. So it took me a year and a half of 3 nights a week, solid writing. And then I sent it to the book publisher and she was like, oh, you actually wrote a book. And I'm like, I thought that's what authors had to do. And she's like, no, most write it in dot points, get a ghostwriter, all that. So that's how I got published, because I actually just did the work. And then the same thing happened for my podcast. Like the first 10 episodes, I tried to make them perfect. Like I'd write out the scripts and I was doing all that, which is probably good at the start because people listen to the first 10 and go, oh, I like this guy. But my advice is don't worry about perfectionism. Like you think your little piece of content is the most important thing in the world. It's not. You should be doing 2 or 3 a day. So just get the flow. The later on the what's the word I'm looking for? The juices of like the good content will come naturally.
Absolutely. And ultimately, you need momentum. You need to create momentum. And the only way to do that is you need to put this stuff out there. You need to get out of your own way. One thing that we see time and time again, because essentially we help a lot of business owners go online with video podcast systems, right? And a lot of people just don't see the big picture. And as you said, they get wrapped into, one piece of content, one reel, one episode. It's like, no, you don't understand. This is a long-term play and consistency here is key in order to win. And you just said it. Alex Formosi just made 100 million with his new book launch, right?
Yeah.
Within 24, 48 hours. And why was he able to do that? Because he's been building brand, trust, credibility, evidence, proof over 5 years plus, right? So it was a no-brainer. I paid him 37 grand AUD to be in his program, right? And guess what? It was a no-brainer because of how much he has given me for absolute free, nothing, never anything to sell me, and high quality, value driven information. So that's why if you have that mindset that you have, which is the long term vision, eventually it just pays off, right? Because there will be a point where it doesn't matter which market you're in or what you sell, there will be a point where people, if they're interested in what you have, they will buy from you. If you've been providing enough nurturing, enough touch points, enough education, and if you're at the top of mind for them, right? So you have done an incredible job at that.
I heard you guys say on one of your reels, it was about like, it'll actually make your clients and leads easier as well because they'll know you. It's kind of like they've seen the videos. They know what I'm not sure if you've spoken about, which I also do, is it also helps you close even if they haven't heard of you, because the first thing people do after a sales call is go on the website, do a bit of stalking, look at your YouTube, look at your Instagram, and they'll already solidify their confidence in you. And that's all it is. You're trying to be an authority figure and build trust. That's all it is. Give information, build trust. The leads will come later on.
Yeah. So then you start your business, you're traveling, you're building obviously the team in itself that can deliver here in Australia. What happens at that point as well with your property portfolio? Did you continue to invest, or at what point, like how big was it back then and when it came to the investment side of things?
Yeah, so full transparency, my portfolio has gone through a bit of ups and downs, not from bad properties, just from lifestyle. So I was previously married, went through a divorce. So I didn't lose much of my portfolio. I actually bought it out. So because I had enough equity, I could just refinance and got there. Then I went from engineering into a buyer's agency role, earning 50 grand a year. So I couldn't keep buying then as well. Then I got my income good, and then I bought a couple commercial properties. Mainly because I didn't have the servicing, because I'd leveraged up the residential portfolio through the divorce. That's what got me the shift to buy a few commercial properties. And then when I went out on my own, I couldn't buy again for a year and a half until you get the financials, basically, and go from there. But what I've done in my recent strategy, I've actually sold most of my residential portfolio and just been buying big commercials. And basically, my whole thing is I want a really big passive income so I don't have to work. I'll still work because I find when you don't have to be there, it's actually more enjoyable because you pick and choose what you want to do. So like my recent acquisition 6 months ago, I bought a whole shopping center, like a suburban retail strip for 3.175 mil. I'm about to buy a multi-tenancy industrial complex for 5 to 6 mil. And then that will give me about a $500,000 passive income in 5 years just from paying it off, because I had a big deposit, because I sold the residential. I've got bucket loads of capital, and then I've put that into commercial on a 50% debt. So I'll have a $500,000 passive income, buy my house, and then just pick and choose the work I want to do. Like, I'll be honest, after $500,000, your life doesn't change. You can do anything you want. You can still fly business class, you can travel. I'm not one of those guys, I know you've interviewed some on the podcast that want to be billionaires and all that type of stuff. I'm not. I love surfing, rock climbing, travel. I want to be able to do more of that. And then work just keeps my attention, whets my appetite.
So you switch your residential for commercial. What are the considerations that a business owner, an investor should keep in mind when it comes to deciding, should I go for residential investments or commercial investments?
Okay, so there's normally two answers for that. One if you're non-business owner, one if you're business owner. I'll go the business owner route just because it makes more sense. It's going to depend on how profitable you are and what you're showing Mr. Taxman. So a lot of my clients come to me, they're not earning an income, but I also know their business is making lots of money and there's lots of money in the business. That lends itself to commercial because the only negative of commercial, like you get the same capital growth and you get 3 times the cash flow. So why would you buy a residential? And the answer is you need a bigger deposit. You typically need a 30% plus deposit, which is really hard if you're like a young investor, like buying $1 million property with stamp duty and a 30% deposit, you're close to 350 grand. Whereas to go buy $1 million residential, like you can save 100 grand and go get a 90% loan. So that's the main difference. So commercial makes sense for a lot of businesses that are either young and don't have the servicing, but they've got the capital, or they don't have servicing because they're not paying themselves. And then it's like I said before, it's matching up. What do they actually want out of property? What are they trying to achieve? Some business owners want to be billionaires. So cool, leverage up on the residential, like go get 90% loans and buy as many as you want if you're going to keep working in business. Other people like me that enjoy surfing and relaxing a bit more might just be buying it out of a lifestyle choice.
I love as well how you're very clear it as to what are your goals, right? Because a lot of the times people just get distracted by, oh, this is what I want. But then when you ask them further questions as to why do you want that, it kind of comes because they just saw someone else, flex this thing or say like, oh yeah, this is the lifestyle, and now they want that lifestyle, but they don't understand, what it got them there or what it takes to get there. So you sound like you're very clear as to this is what I want out of life. These are the numbers in order for me to live that dream life that I want and what financial freedom is to you. And it sounds like it's a lot of, flexibility in terms of your life. Is that correct?
Let's touch on that because I also see business owners do that with other businesses. And I admittedly, for the first 2 years, I used to watch what the competition was doing like a hawk, like literally like, oh, this company's doing 50 deals a month. How do I match that? This company's doing 30 deals. Oh, this company is doing this much revenue. And I used to try to match it. And then I was kind of like, for my personal investing, I'm not caring what they own. So why am I trying to emulate their business? And funnily enough, as soon as I actually unfollow the competition. So on my socials, I've blocked all the competitors. I actually got to be more authentic and I didn't have to dilute myself anymore. I was just like, let's just do Steve. And I actually grew tremendously after that. So it can come in all facets. You can do it with people's wealth. You can also try to, and you've probably done it with some social media companies and podcast companies as well, where you're like, oh, they're doing this, let's follow that. You don't have to. You can run your own race, and I'll tell you now, you'll be happier.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things where, I tell the team always in the sense of like, we are aware of the competitors, right? You need to pay attention as to what's happening and have awareness. But at the same time, if you're so focused on the competition, how are you gonna do what you need to do for your business, right? For me, it's like I'm just locked in building the number one podcast agency. I don't care what anyone else is doing or competitors. I'm just running my own race, but I'm aware as to what's happening, what are the market trends, who are some of the people that are on the space that, you need to keep an eye on because especially as you continue to grow, everyone's coming for you, right? They can only be one number one. So you do need to keep almost a battle awareness, as to what's going on in your space and some of the best people as well doing it. So in terms of commercial investments as well, then, what makes a great commercial investment?
All right, so it's similar to residential, but it's always this looking 10 years down the line. So like I can say the good tenant, long lease, low vacancy rate region, like versatile premises, all that. Like that's the unicorn of what you want. But all I look at, I actually don't even try to like guess what the capital growth in the next few years. I'll know, I'll be like, oh, there's a lot of demand for this. but I look at the asset and go, in 10 years' time, will this be in more demand than it is now? That's all I do. So a simple example would be, say I'm going to buy a body corporate warehouse in a capital city, and it's completely surrounded by residential properties. And then I look at that kind of zoning, and they're changing the low density into medium and high density, i.e. knocking down the residential, building apartment blocks and high stories and townhouses and all that stuff. And in 10 years' time, they're going to have 25% more population. So I go, okay, if the vacancy rates are really, really tight on this warehouse, and typically the stuff we buy is 1 to 2 month vacancy periods, and then you get a tenant for 10 years, and there's going to be 30% more people in 10 years' time, how is this going to be in less demand? Like, there's going to be more people, they're going to need more car mechanics, wholesalers, fabricators, storage, distribution centers. So I'm like, cool, there's more demand. The market's going to do the lifting. There's too many external factors with the economy, interest rates, all that type of stuff. But no matter what, if there's more demand, on the level that I'm at now, I'm still wealthier than the guy next to me because I've got a thing that's in more demand than other people, which will translate to capital growth. But that's how I kind of look at it. I stopped trying to focus on that short term money, money, money. It's demand. Let's focus on demand. Same thing happens with podcasting. Work out the piece of content, not that makes you the most money, that has the most demand for people.
Love that. You have obviously made over 2,000 acquisitions, right? Thousands, from my understanding, have been in residential, and you're almost about to do as well over 1,000 on commercial. What is the main mistake that you see commercial investors make when it comes to getting their first investment?
That's easy. People chase yield. So they just want a stupidly high yield because most are walking away from residential and they're like, well, if I'm going commercial, I want to get a high yield. General rule of thumb is the higher the yield, the higher the risk. Not always. Like you can buy in North Sydney, for instance, has a 0% vacancy rate and you'll get a 4.5% net yield. But no, this has happened since I've started. I've been doing this for 10 years now. People will choose the arbitrary line in the sand for what yields are doing now and then push up and try to think, I must get better than that. So when I was buying 7 years ago for 8.5% yield, people wanted 9. Then it was 7% and people wanted 7.5. Then it got to 6 and they wanted 6.5. Now we're at kind of 5.5 and they want 6, 6.5. So they go out in that market. And funnily enough, like if they just bought the 7% 5 years ago, that's now yielding 12% anyway. But if there's lots of demand, and I come back to that word, demand for that type of property, you're not going to get it at a stupidly high yield above the market anyway. And that's where they go wrong. They'll go buy an area. They'll go by Brisbane. They'll go, oh, I want a 6.5. And they'll go buy a tin shed that's got huge maintenance costs and high vacancy rates, as opposed to like a bulletproof one, like I said, surrounded by residential, really high demand. The demand will do the heavy lifting. That'll give you rental increases because a high demand property gets you growth in rent, then it gets you growth in capital growth. But to answer your question, they just chase yield. But in reality, most first-time buyers are buying, let's just say, $1 million property. The difference between a 5.5% and 6.5% property is $5,000 a year. So you're actively going, I'm going to buy a subpar property to save $5,000 a year. And to those people, I say, look, just go pack shelves one night a week at Coles. You'll make up that $5,000, and at least you have a property you can sleep at night.
Got it. You're obviously, we were discussing as well, there's a lot of information out there, a lot of property and investing gurus out there. In your experience and from your perspective, what are the biggest lies that investor or property gurus are telling out there to people considering buying a commercial real estate investment?
The commercial ones aren't too bad, I suppose, like because there's not many of them. There's probably like 3 or 4 major competitors. It's actually the resi ones because we spoke about this off air. They're trying to break through the noise on social media, and the only way you can do that with headline statements. And that's what we spoke about before of like, get a $200,000 passive income in 10 years time and all this type of stuff. They sell the dream, but just realize if it was that easy, every single person would do it. You can still do really well. But just bring it back to the numbers. Like old engineer Steve, I would literally write the number that I wanted on the page. So early on it was $100,000. It's like, cool, $100,000. What size portfolio would I need at what loan to value ratio and what interest rate would I need to get that? And you actually work out, it was like 8 mil at 60% LVR. And I was like, okay, that's a big number. Cool. If I bought $1 million property now, how much growth would I need to get that number in 10 years' time? And all of a sudden the growth is like 15% per year. And you go, oh, that's above the national average. Okay, now it's actually a 15-year plan, because if I do it at 7%, it's going to, and like I said, you can do value adds. If you're not happy with those numbers, you can do some creative stuff, do some renovations, subdivisions, developments, add mezzanine floors to your commercial, but just strip it back to the numbers. And most people just like, they go to a buyer's agent and they're like, cool, I'll get you this, just buy this property. No, get the number, strip it back. At least you've got them on the page to make a decision.
Is it possible to make, because you were saying before, that you're aiming for 500K on passive income, right, from your investment portfolio. Is it possible to make 500K in passive income with residential investments?
Yes, if you run a very, very, very successful business. If you actually run the numbers for 500K, like let's say average house will rent for $50,000 a year. So you need 10 properties completely paid off for that. So like 50 grand, you'll get a $1.2 million property. So you need 10 of those. So paid off, 10.2 million paid off to get that. Good luck getting that when you're kind of earning $100,000 a year. So you need that. But the cool thing with commercial, you can actually build a solid passive income simply. Like you go buy $1 million commercial at a 6% net yield. So that's 60 grand net that you get, because there's no outgoings with commercial on a 70% loan to value ratio. That pays itself off. If you don't do anything else to it, you just let it sit there and the positive cash flow pays off. With interest rates at the moment now, it's about 11 years. If they come down, it'll be quicker, but let's just say 10 years on average. And with small rental increases, that'll be up to around $90,000 passive income. So all of a sudden, I've got one property over 10 years. If I buy two of them, getting close to 200K just from buying two simple properties. And that's the cool thing with commercial, because it is 3 times the cash flow, and you can actually forecast that. Like I mentioned before, the hard thing is getting that deposit. Getting a 30% deposit is the toughest thing. But yeah, if you're shooting for the stars, you have to do something outside the norm. You have to be one of the 1%ers. And there's so many ways to do that. It can side hustles, business. One of my clients who's made $1 million, he sells Lego on the weekends. So he buys the big packs of the multi-figurines and then sells them individually on Gumtree and thing. And he's got to that just by doing a side hustle. So you just got to do something. No, the old saying, no one gets rich from working. You've got to do something for yourself or outside the box.
And in terms of, as well, from your own experience and what you have seen with business owners, at what point, because it sounds like basically you started building wealth before you actually became a business owner, right? So that in terms of from my experience and in my own case as well, is I started building the business, and then eventually I started to realize, like, well, I need to do something with these profits. It's ridiculous to keep this on a bank account where it's getting eaten by inflation, right? So that was what forced me to start to get deeper into investing and all these things.
Hey, real quick, if you're a founder, CEO, or business owner looking to build a personal brand, scale your business, and become a great leader, I've been curating all the best lessons, tactics, and strategies that I've learned from 7, 8, and 9-figure entrepreneurs and my own business journey into the ultimate playbook to help you accomplish just that. So if you're keen to get them straight into your inbox, sign up for our newsletter in the link down below. Now back to the episode.
So I'm curious to hear from you, in your experience, when is the right time for business owners to start building wealth?
It's always going to be case by case, because like we keep kind of reiterating, it's when do you want things? What's the style of your business? How volatile is your business? What's your plans for the business? But then you need to strip that back to finance. But generally, once you've got more than a couple $100,000 in a business that you don't need for the business, you've got the two choices of throw it back into the business and try to really, really scale, or put it aside. So that's what I kind of do. Like next property is probably going to be business profits, where just kind of shift it away. I want to basically have a bricks and mortar bank account that sticks with inflation, like you said. So how do I get as much cash flow as I can with as low risk? And that's why I bought a little shopping center, because it's got 8 tenants. If I lose one, I still get 7/8 of the rent come through. But once you've got a couple $100,000 that you don't need for the business, then you need to start looking at it and then kind of chip away at that stage. But again, what you're trying to achieve, what time frame you want to do it in, what do you have to work with finance, is the kind of thing. Key point, always talk to people who know what they're doing. Most business owners will go talk to their old resi broker who has no idea about business finance and commercial property and all that type of stuff. So get someone who works with your particular crowd that you want to be.
That's one thing that is so key, and not only with investing, but pretty much anything in life. I was telling recently, where a business owner was inquiring about working with us, right? And then basically she started telling me like, oh, this person was telling me that maybe that running the podcast will be very expensive, and I just said, hey, who is this person? Oh, it's like the daughter of my neighbor and that doesn't even have a business or anything. And I'm like, do you listen to yourself of what you're telling me right now, who you're listening? Right? Like, is I explain to people, if I'm trying to get a six pack, I wouldn't be listening to a fat dude telling me how to get a six pack. I don't care how much he has read about it if he hasn't done it himself, right? So it's like, if you're trying to get into commercial real estate, don't be listening to your average Joe or that doesn't even have a commercial investment. I'll be asking to someone like you, hey dude, what does it take? How do I get it done? Right? If I want the result.
Yeah, we get that all the time with like accountants and financial advisors. We like present a property to a client, and then they go to the accountant, they're like, what are you buying a commercial property for? They're terrible investments. And then my first question is, well, how many commercial properties does he own? They're like, well, none. And you're like, great, what a good sample size that is. And then they'll own like one property residential and that's kind of it. So always listen to experts. So even like my accountants and brokers are used to working with other buyers agents. And like, so my accountant works with all the buyers agents. So he knows like how it's coming, how to structure it. So always choose a person for not where you're at now, necessarily like maybe 1 or 2 steps ahead of where you want to be.
That leads perfectly into the next part, which is structures, right? One thing that I started to find out when I was considering buying our previous office space was I started to learn about, should you do it on your personal name? Should you do it on a trust? Should you do it on an SMSF, holding company? There were all these different options as to how to go about it, right? And obviously, each case will be individual, but I'm curious to ask you, what is on average the best way to go about structuring when you're looking to invest into commercial assets as a business owner?
All right, I'll give you the professional answer, then I'll give you the Steve answer. Professional answer is what your accountant says if they're a good accountant and knows what you're trying to achieve, because it's always going to come down to tax minimization and asset protection. So they're the two that the accountant considers. One of the forgotten ones, you actually need to talk to your commercial mortgage broker as well. And this is where a lot of people kind of get it wrong, because finance is most people's enemy. Like they just can't get the finance. So even if the accountant said, oh, look, this is because your partner's not working, let's buy this under a personal name. If the broker comes back and says, oh, look, I can get you $2 million for commercial, but only $1 million if you buy under your personal name, if they buy under a trust, but only $1 million if you buy under your personal name, who cares about the tax saving? I don't care if you're saving 5 or 10 grand a year, we're getting twice the asset. So marrying up all three of those things, the tax minimizations, the asset protection, and what the mortgage broker says, and everyone's different. So like, probably too much information. When we buy a principal place of residence, it will go under my partner's name, not my name, because I'm dealing with lots of people's money. At some point in time, someone might try to sue me. So that's to protect my family. So that's got nothing to do with tax minimization or like all that stuff. It's just asset protection. That's why we're doing the family home there. To answer your question with the Steve answer, typically trust. If you're a business owner, you'll need to set up a discretionary trust. Like it's the easiest way to move money around and pay company tax rates and give profits to beneficiaries and all that type of stuff. The only people I really see doing under companies are ultra high net worth, because it actually makes more sense. So most people just keep buying under trust. But again, go back to your accountant. They literally studied for 3-4 years doing it. And if they're a good one, they've been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years, they are going to know more than you.
I'm curious as well, after you have done so many acquisitions, right, for yourself, for clients, what's the biggest mistake you have ever made doing a commercial real estate investment?
I actually haven't been too bad because I'm quoted and known for buying boring properties, and what I mean by that is just ones that have low risk. Because like there's other buyers agents out there that will chase yield, so they'll go buying the Rockhamptons and the Mackays and be like, oh, we got you a 7% net return, but the vacancy rate's there like 1 to 2 years. So I'm not buying them. I'm always buying the really kind of ones. I'll admit there's been tough times for some clients. So sometimes if you buy like a suburban retail. So we bought like a couple on like Mooloolaba Beach on the Sunshine Coast, for instance, a retail there. When they lose a tenant, a typical retail like that is generally 6 to 18 months vacancy, which scares a lot of people. They see that number. I mean, so your eyes go, oh, but you got to remember, you're getting 3 times the cash flow. So if I bought that property on a 5-year lease, which most of them I do, and at the end of the 5 years, it sits there vacant for a year or so, theoretically, that could sit there vacant for another 10 years before I'm in a worse position than buying a residential property. And when you say it like that, people go, oh, just people feel the hurt in that moment in time because they can't plan for 10 years' time. But if I just left that cash flow for the 5 years in a side account, I've still got another 10 years of buffer compared to residential. And that's what calms people down. The average tenancy for something like the Mooloolaba one is generally 7 to 15 years. So you're only going through this year every 7 to 15 years. So there's been some like that. COVID was obviously a fun time for anyone who owned kind of retail. That was a tough one. Glad that it only lasts like 6 months and most of the time we just gave incentives. But yeah, in regards to what I do, I haven't really had any bad ones. Admittedly, the market's also been very kind to everyone in the last 5 years. So if you bought in a good capital city with a high demand property, everything's gone up 30 to 50% and the rents have gone up 30, 50%. So yeah, I haven't had too many bad ones. I'd say the biggest mistake though I get is clients get attached to a property. So listeners need to probably realize this. When you go into contract on a commercial, they're subject to due diligence. So you get like a 21-day period where you can actually crush a deal. You get your full deposit back, you lose nothing. And the reason for that is because you got to check everything. You got to do lease review, contract review, tenant interviews, road and traffic analysis, vacancy studies, occupancy study, check leases are registered. Like there's quite a lot to do. There's 20, 30 hours worth of work to do. I even we'll find something wrong with it. And then the client's like, oh no, I still want to proceed. And I'm like, you've got someone here who gets paid to get your property telling you I don't want to get paid this time. Like, listen to me, like I can do better. And they're just attached. They've envisaged the future with it. But if I find something wrong, I'm going to tell them because I'd rather get them back for the next deal and then buy 2, 3, 4, 5. That's how I make more money in the long run from them.
Absolutely, that makes absolute sense. In terms as well of building an 8-figure portfolio, right? But aside from time and income, what holds most business owners back from having an 8-figure portfolio or keeps them at somewhere around the 7-figure investment portfolio?
It's probably the same answer for their business as well. What holds them back a 7-figure business to an 8-figure business? And I just say fear. It's just this fear of having to go. Like I even get it as well. Like I'm not pretending I'm the messiah here. Like when I sold my resi portfolio and started buying all up in commercial, I was still sitting there being like, is this the right thing to do? Am I like, this is silly. No one else is doing this. And then I had to kind of calm myself down and be like, no, you will be happy with a $500,000 passive income. You're not the guy who wants a $50 million, $100 million portfolio. But again, I still had the fear. Same thing with business owners. They think if they make a mistake, it's going to put them back. But the funny thing, I keep seeing this on my socials actually. They talk about guarantees. When you do sales training, people go, oh, what's the guarantee it's going to perform well? And the guarantee is you'll be in the exact same position if you do nothing. So it's just fair.
That is exactly what we tell people when every now and then you will get someone coming in. Oh, what's the guarantee? Well, the guarantee is very simple. If you don't do anything about it, you will stay exactly where you are, right? And that's that I've found to be. And the longer you do business, the longer you even, are an investor, you realize that nothing is promised. If it was, and everyone will be rich, everyone would be extremely successful in both business, investing, and anything in life, right? So, chasing guarantees, I just think is
the easy
mindset.
answer I give them is like, find me a successful business that's not on socials, that's not doing a podcast and things like that. And if they can, cool, go emulate them, but you're going to find they all do it because it's all about like marketing. It's like you don't even, that's the other thing I want to touch on. I was really focusing on early on about being the best. My systems had to be the best. The properties had to be there. Everything, my staff had to be there. Everything has to be the best. Not if you look at the big companies, most of the time they're not. Like the simple metaphor I use is like who makes the most burgers in the world? And everyone's like McDonald's. Do they make the best burgers? No, they don't. You don't have to be perfect in everything. I want to make sure the quality of my properties are up there, like 90%. But you can't do 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%. It's not scalable.
So I asked you as well, what was the worst mistake? And you said like, hey, you have had a great track record. What's the best commercial real estate deal you have done for yourself?
Probably my first. It's always the first one that opens your eyes. I bought a little freestanding building in Brisbane next to a train station. It was a cafe. It's now a barbershop, but like it was a freestanding building with 10 car spots next to the train station. I got that for 440 grand. That's worth over $1 million now. And like just the value add, I could build an apartment block. I actually rent 8 of the car spots out for commuters. That gives me an extra 10 grand a year. But it just opened my eyes. That was like a 7.5% yielding asset. I bought it and it was giving me like 20 grand passive income from day dot. That one's paid itself off. 7 years later, that's completely paid off and giving me around 50 grand passive income. So like the first one's always better. We see some really cool deals through work and value add, and like most of the clients that make lots of money, we do like build a mezzanine floor or get something that's under rented and give it the uplift that way. But again, I buy boring properties, ones that tick the boxes for clients, get them there. Once we've got the good base, then you can get creative and you can try to do some value add. But I bought anything from petrol stations to cinemas to restaurants to beachfront properties, whole retail strips. I own a personal shopping center as well. But again, assessing your risk profile versus what you're trying to achieve is the way to do it.
And curious to ask you as well, and are you purely invested into property, or do you still have diversification in other assets like shares, Bitcoin, or anything else?
No, I've dabbled in Bitcoin for fun and stuff. And funnily enough, at university, I bought it when it was $80 and sold it at 160, thinking I was a genius. So I actually, on a side note, I always get asked about that. Like, I don't regret anything with that because I would have never kept the Bitcoin and crypto to that point. Like, if I had 100 grand in it and it went to 200 grand, the risk adverse nature I've got, I would have sold half of it. And then the half of it would have doubled and I would have so I never would have got to now anyway. I still would have made a good return. But to answer your question, generally not. I don't invest in anything I don't understand wholeheartedly. And that's why I'm kind of doing that. I've got my share portfolio in my self-managed super fund. And I get picked on that all the time. People go, oh, Steve, you buy like 1 in 4 of your deals of self-managed super funds for clients. Why aren't you buying? I'm like, to answer your question, it's diversification. It's my diversification. I get to have a nice managed share portfolio. My next venture will probably be another business, just because I enjoy the building, not the maintaining of the business. And that's the fun. Like the fun part is it's like the grind is the fun, not the once you got it running. Like with my business, if I don't have a headache for a month, you kind of sit there being like, oh, I'm bored now. Like what's next to work on? So I think next one will be a business venture. Hopefully a feel good, hopefully like some form of charity or something I can get a good feedback loop from.
And obviously you have been very successful with building your own property portfolio as well as business. As you told me at the beginning of this as well, you're on track to crack 8 figures with your own business. What is the most painful lesson you have learned as a business owner?
Oh, I've never been asked that. The most painful lesson. Probably not getting rid of people early on that weren't part of the same vision. So I had like, because business was new to me, my first business, you'd hire a couple people and you knew they weren't performing, they didn't fit culture, they weren't doing, I just couldn't bring myself to get rid of them. I was just like, so, and I haven't had to do it many times, but ones where you knew from the first 6 months, they weren't the right fit and you just paid their salary for 12, 24 months, 3 years, and then had to pull the cord out of necessity just because it was causing too much drama. So I'd say probably making those hard decisions where people's livelihood and personal relationships are on the line. That was probably the toughest and the hardest lesson for me.
That was definitely a big one that we had to go through, eventually when you just get someone because you're maybe in so much pain, you need your a fulfillment is hurting right now and you need more support, and you just try to solve the problem too quick and overlook, is this the right person? Do they fit the culture that we have? Do they have the potential that we're looking for in them, really being world class, as I said always to our team. So definitely can be a big mistake that can set you back as well. It feels like, oh no, it's okay, just get them for now, we'll sort it later. And the
Yeah.
longer you keep them in, the more it becomes a problem in business as
I,
well. So yeah.
it's funny you say that. I had the same thing. I would talk to a client on the phone. I'd be like, I like you. Do you want a job? And that would be it. That would be the interview. And you're kind of like, what am I doing? And then, like you said, first person applies. And it's hard. It's like, we all know that like hiring is the most important thing to do. And you see all the socials like, make sure you get the right people. You don't have time as a founder. You are literally doing 1,000 jobs and you don't have time. You don't have time to interview 8 different people for an hour and then have second interviews. So that's the kind of hardest thing. What I've also learned is as the company grows, sometimes the people don't fit as well. So like we've got now like an org chart where we've got heads of departments and stuff like that. And people's feathers get ruffled by having a new boss and, oh, this is not the way it was. I like that there was no structure and business and SOPs and job descriptions and all that type of stuff. Cool. They might not be the right spot in that business now because things change over time.
Yeah, that's another part as well that you start realizing as things also get bigger, and the vision gets bigger, everything just goes to a new level. Some of the people that have been since the beginning might not be exactly the people that will continue to support the vision and the business to get to that next level, right? And it's very interesting as you go with it because initially, you have this movie as to, oh, it's gonna be us to the very end of the world
Yeah.
building this thing. And then, at some point you will realize like, hey, maybe the movie doesn't go exactly like that. Maybe at some point, some people will help the team get to a certain stage, and then you'll have to let them go to open the doors for that next person that is gonna actually unlock those new possibilities for everyone in the
Yeah.
team.
Well, they
And
just bring different experiences as well. Whereas if they've joined you since the startup, that's all they know. They don't have anything more to add sometimes. And sometimes that's the best thing because they've grown with the business, they know everything, but sometimes it's actually not. One of the hardest things I've actually dealt with recently, just because this is the founders kind of one, is as my team, I got around 24 people now, and that's in Australia. I've got the VAs and all that type of stuff, but 24. Being friends with everyone is near impossible. When we were a team of 5, it was like a little family, and it's like we kind of eat together, we bleed together kind of thing. Now it's like I've got staff that I've only had like a couple 20-minute phone conversations with, and that's it. Because I found I was draining my time talking to every single person for half hour each week was just destroying my time. So it's kind of like, and I had to be ruthless. Like they'd literally come to me and ask me something. I now send them a text back being like, have you asked your line manager? And like, because they need to ask me just because I don't have the time, which feels really weird having staff that you don't know intricately. But again, if I've got a team of 50, there's no way I'm going to be best friends with everyone.
yeah, dude, now that you mentioned that, in the last couple years, because our team has gone, we have a big chunk overseas in a few different countries, different time zones. Locally, it's about 6 or 7 of us right now, and one of those things is that now when we pay some invoices and things, I'm like, who is this person? Like that. I don't know a big chunk of our team, and then I have to ask our CEO, hey, who's this person? It's a new name. And she's like, oh, that's the new a graphic designer. Oh, that's the new, social media manager, new editor, and I'm like, man, really? Have we got to this place where, I don't know everyone on the business, which is,
I had
yeah,
this
it's
last week.
very
I,
strange.
I went to lunch with my team last Friday, and one of the person was like, "Oh, they started mentioning a name. I won't say the name because I would embarrass them, but they said the person's name, and I'm like, who's that? And they're like, you hired him a month ago. I'm like, oh yeah.
How have you been able uh, to protect the culture as you scale to, 20 plus team members locally?
The hardest thing we've had is we're a fairly remote team. We used to be fully remote. I found it really hard to maintain culture digitally. Like you can do all the fun and games and stuff, but then you see other companies do like, oh, we're doing a quiz day and stuff like that. I've kind of scrapped that. So now my Sydney crew, we go into a share office once every 2 weeks. And then 3 to 4 times a year, I fly everyone in and I pay for it. So we kind of do a big team day, a dinner. So that we're doing that next Wednesday. And then once to twice a year, we do a team getaway where we all go away together. And I found that fuels it, because I found when we're just digitally, like, no one enjoys work that much to sit at a computer for 10 hours a day and that be their livelihood. We do need some form of interaction. And people can say, oh, yeah, but there's a vision. No, it's your vision. They're not going to believe in it at the same level you do. And I could actually see it on team meetings once a week. The morale was just stepping down slowly, and they just kind of be like, oh, another team meeting. And then we do a team get together and go out and have dinner and stuff. It was high again. For the next 4 weeks, it was really high. So that was probably the biggest thing, is just be conscious and don't be afraid to spend a bit of money. And you can do it cheaply as well with team days and stuff like that. But try to bring people together. And then the other one is, like I said before, is get rid of the people that are killing culture. Like I was found like the same 2 or 3 people, I was hearing grumbles to me every single week. And then it's like, okay, now not only are they not making other people, funnily enough, they can actually be a top performer in the team, but no, if they're ruining the rest of the ecosystem, they're not worth it.
That's key. Hey, when it doesn't matter, I don't care how good someone is and how much they're bringing to the team, if no one likes them on the team, because then you're gonna diminish as well the productivity, the efficiency, the culture. You're gonna hurt everything else, regardless of how much you're bringing to the table as a team. You need to make sure that you're a great team player to be around, because one person is not gonna make a great business. It's a collective team, right?
Yeah, when you actually do the numbers, like bring it back to simple mathematics, like say a good salesperson does 20% more than everyone else. If you got 20 staff, if he just brings everyone down by 1%, they're actually worse off having him. 1%. If it starts becoming 5 or 10, it's just like, well, cool, we could have hired another 2 or 3 people and did an 80% job.
Yeah, makes sense. What are the 3 most powerful questions business owners can ask themselves in order to scale to 8 figures?
Oh, okay. Do you need the money now? And so that's what I mean by that is start thinking more in the future. We all get caught up in it. It's like, oh, look at my revenue kind of now. And then your focus becomes like building that revenue. And I did the same. Like I made my first $1 million. I'm like, $1 million, cool. Next year, let's make $2 million. And the year after, make $4 million. But if you don't actually focus on that and you shift the goal to, like I mentioned before, about something that's not about the money, that's where you're going to break through. Like mine was like, cool, let's get 5,000 people watching every single reel as a target. And then it's like, cool, let's crack 1 million views on something. And you start doing the ones that aren't really to do with money. And then that's where I've seen like the exponential growth. So that's probably the first one, is if you don't need the money to survive, focus on like the outside stuff, not the actual money. Again, still make it profitable, but focus on that. What's another one? Hire the right people, which we've touched on before. One of the reasons I've kind of scaled much faster than most of the other buyers agents are a lot of people get really cheap at the start. And this kind of flows back to number 1, where I said, don't worry about the money. They'll be scared to, like, say they earn $1 million, to hire 10 people on 100 grand, because they're going like, well, I'm not going to make any money. But if you get that right, then all of a sudden you go from 1 million to 10 mil, because you've got the right people in place. And I've been good at that, because I'm not cheap. Like I'm not a tight ass. I'm happy to splurge on the right people. So early on, because I was overseas, I've got 5 engineers in my team, like guys that were earning 250 grand a year, but I know they're problem solvers. If there's a problem, they fix it. Yes, I probably could have hired someone at half the price, but they're there to grow the business. They got 3 valuers and a lawyer, etc. So I've probably got the most overqualified team. So I was kind of good, just because I didn't want to hire no offense if you've got young people on your team, the young 21-year-old with no experience that I couldn't handball tasks to. So I kind of got some level of seniority early on, which meant the org chart was kind of good there. So that's the second one, right people. Third one, I'm just going to tie up the podcast quite nicely, actually. Fear. Stop worrying about like that. Like you're going to be okay. Like you are not going to end up homeless. And even if you do, I'm sure you've got a friend that will let you sleep on their couch and feed you food. Like, that is the worst case scenario. You're not going to die. Like, and that was one of the cool things I had. So when I started my business, even though I had a little bit of a passive income because of my portfolio, I actually had $0 in my bank account. And that's because I had to pay out the divorce from my portfolio. So every bit of money I had was into that, to literally to the $0. And that was, weirdly, it was probably the happiest I was in my life. The less money I had in my bank account, because I couldn't lose anything. I was like, oh, I'll have a crack. If it doesn't work out, so be it. So yeah, so that's probably the nice little tie it up. Don't worry about the money, hire the right people, let go of fear.
Especially the last one, that's one thing that I always tell people when they just get into this fear, based thinking, and we all go through it in our own ways, but it's just like, what's the worst thing that could happen? You only get this one shot of being here on this floating rock. Why not go for it? Why I just want to find out how great I can be, and
Yeah.
that's it. Why not
Good.
go as hard as humanly possible?
This is going to sound really arrogant, but I've actually found, now that I'm like a high net worth individual per se, and I meet all these other business owners that I used to look up to and aspire to, you meet them in person and they are very normal people. They're not special. They're not doing the ice baths at 4 a.m. and do this, blah, blah, blah. Some of them are actually idiots. You meet them and you're like, how are you making $10 million a year? Like, you have no idea about property or data or anything like that. But they actually just had to go.
This and dude, that's such a great point, because I invested this year over 100K on one of my mentors, right? That's just one of them, and the whole thing about being there is that everyone's working towards $1 million months or adding the next $1 million month, right? And I was in this room a few months ago in Miami for a mastermind with everyone there, and I look around and I'm like, man, everyone here is rich. That, because otherwise you can't even get into. You have to apply
Yeah.
and qualify and all these things, and you start having all these conversations with all these people, and some of them you're just questioning, dude, how the fuck did you made 8 figures? Like, it really cemented in my mind as to there's absolutely no reason why I won't get there. Because I met plenty of people that have done it, and some of them you just ask yourself, man, if he did it, there's no way I won't make it. But it just shows me, it showed me that, hey, it's not about being the smartest. It's not about being the hardest worker even. It's not about, even having the best team. Sometimes there is a big luck element as to they happen to be in the right niche, in the right market at the right time. Like anything AI related right now is getting such a momentum that is absolutely almost impossible to compete with a niche that is leveraging AI. But the trend is not always going to be like that. It's just with the current state that we're in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just shows you that really anyone can do it. Are you willing to pay the price? Because there is a different price for everyone to pay in order to get there. This is at this or that segment. So you just choose one or the other.
All right.
Okay. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Sushi or steak?
So, sushi.
Expert or jack of all trades?
Jack of all trades.
Product or service business?
Service, obviously.
CEO or founder?
Founder.
Instagram or TikTok?
Instagram. I'm on TikTok, but
Instagram.
I'm not actually on TikTok.
Instagram or YouTube?
YouTube.
YouTube or LinkedIn?
YouTube. LinkedIn's dead now. I hate it.
YouTube or X?
YouTube.
Photos or videos?
Videos.
Short form or long form video content?
Long form.
Newsletters or podcasting?
Podcasting.
My boy. Organic or paid marketing?
Ooh, organic.
1 million followers with low conversions or 1,000 raving fans?
1,000 raving fans.
Building a talent or hiring a talent?
Hiring.
A talent at a high price tag or multiple cheap C talent?
The high talent with the high price tag.
Residential or commercial investment?
Both. We're commercial for the answer.
Property investing or shares?
Property investing.
Property investing or buying businesses?
Ooh, property investing,
Building a business or buying a business?
building a business,
Passion, six-figure business or stressful eight-figure business?
passion, six-figure every day of the week.
The most important one, sales or marketing?
Ooh, good one. Marketing.
What are the three things that you will tell your younger self in order to build a successful eight-figure business and eight-figure investment portfolio?
Start earlier than you think you can and make sure you enjoy it. Have fun along the way.
What's the worst business advice you have ever received?
Ooh, that's a good one. What's the worst business advice I ever get? Probably to not give my education away for free. I had literally everyone, like when I did my 10-hour course, like it cost me around $80,000. By the time I like scripted it, booked the studio, filmed, edited about 30 hours of footage, got it down with all the interactive graphics and that, I went to, and then like someone I really, really respect in the industry were like, Steve, you're cheaping your brand by releasing it for free, like charge money so people see it as a premium. And I was like, no, I'm going to go with my gut. I think education should be free anyway. And I'm like, worst case, I'll get to more people. And then within a couple of weeks, it had 12,000 people enroll in it. And he's just like, he came back after, he's like, you are actually right. You should have done it for free. And I was like, oh, cool. So just trust your gut.
And by the way, I've seen the course, super high quality level of information, very well structured. So well done on putting that out there for people. You should totally be listening to this and you're interested in finding out more about commercial investing, definitely go and watch that course. What's the best business advice that you have ever received?
Best business advice they're saying. Probably I've mentioned it in the podcast. Stop worrying about the money and focus on giving the service and getting in front of most people's eyes. The systems and processes. The money will come if you get the marketing and the systems on par, and then it just becomes a dial. You just get to crank. I can control my leads now based on social media spend. I know if I chuck in 50 grand, I get this many leads. So I can manage the business so much better now. Whereas at the start, like 1 month you'll get 20 leads that you convert, sign up, and the next one's 2. Now it's much more linear and I can actually kind of progress that way.
It's so much better when it does become that money printing as to, you know, exactly, okay, if this is the numbers that we're trying to scale to, this is exactly what it looks like in terms of marketing spend that we need to do in order to get there. Steve, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. Where can people find you, learn more about you, what you do, maybe even getting your help to get their first commercial real estate investment?
Yeah, just type in Steve Palise on Google or paliseproperty.com. Like you mentioned, I've got literally, you can get my 3 free books. So you can get the Resi Commercial and Development one. The courses on there, every spreadsheet I use for clients on my due diligence checklist, literally everything is free. Like there is nothing behind a paywall. So yeah, just go to paliseproperty.com, and then if you want to have a chat, just reach out. I can chat with everyone.
As usual, all the links will be down below this episode. If you enjoy it, all I ask is that you share it with another founder, business owner that will also benefit from this conversation. And other than that, I will see you on the next one. Good vibes to everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Hey legends, my goal with Founders Playbook is to help 1 million entrepreneurs build successful personal brands and businesses so that they can increase their impact and profits. You can support the mission by simply sharing the podcast with other founders and entrepreneurs. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and follow us on social media. Let's get to work.